and x3. Try to find out what are the splits available in x2. Try to find out what are the splits available in x3. Then you find the best split within x2 as well. So for example, in x2 we have x2 less than 0.5, x2 less than 0.9, x2 less than 1.1, x2 less than 1.8, x2 less than 2.9. x2 less than 1.1 gave a drop of 0.08. Similarly, x3. In x1, this is the best split with a drop of 0.1. In x2, this is the best split with a drop of 0.8. In x3, let's say x3 less than 1.8 gave a drop of 0.12. Now, it's a competition between these three, x1, x2, and x3. x2 less than 1.1 with a drop of 0.08 is the least among all. So the first root level split will be made by x2 less than 1.1. And that's how we decide how do we separate. How do we separate means in each variable for each possible split, we compute what is going to be the drop in Gini index. And once we have that for each variable, we pick the best within those variables. Then it's a fight between the best of the bests. Then within that, three variables, x1, x2, x3, x2 less than p is the split level that gave this significant drop in the Gini index from the root node to the child node. So we will stop and we will pick this one here and we will do the first level split. This is called as the root level split. And that's how this decision tree has decided balance less than 1800 is where it has seen the significant drop in the Gini index. And that's why balance is used to make this root level split. Okay, does that make sense? Let's see if there are any questions. Choosing a split condition will vary depending upon the variable that we have at hand. If we have a variable, okay, let me redo this with another example so that it will be slightly more easier for us to understand. Okay, we have a root node. My root node split is 60%, 40%. 60% belongs to no, 40% belongs to yes. My root node Gini index roughly is 0.4. I have variables x1, x2, x3, and y. Let's say x1 is a continuous variable, something like height. Generally, what is the range of height? The range of height will be 5.0 to let's say 6.7. That's the range of the height, right? Now, if you have 1,000 observations, that is having a height range from 5 to 6.7, it creates percentiles. What is the 10th percentile? What is the 20th percentile? What is the 30th percentile? All the way up to 90th percentile. So let's say 10th percentile is 5.1, 20th percentile is 5.23, 30th percentile is 5.3, 40th percentile is 5.42, and 90th percentile is 6.4. Now these values become our split criteria for this variable. So it will try height less than 5.1. This is one level. Then height less than 5.23, height less than 5.3, 5.42, all the way up to height less than 6.4. That's one way of finding the split criteria. If it is discrete, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, no decimal values, then it's like height less than, some variable, x2 less than 2, x2 less than 3, x2 less than 4. No need to try these two. So these three will be decided as the splits. Okay. Depending upon what variable we have, it would change the approach of how to find the splits. If it is a continuous variable, there will be too many values, so that's why it uses percentile. If it is a discrete variable, then you can just ignore the first and last and take the middle values as the splits. Okay. Fine. Now let's redo this. So we have to split this. So we need to choose this split criteria. What is the split criteria for this one? Let's say we choose x2 less than p, and it gave us some 700 observations here, 300 observations here, and at this weighted average of the Gini index, say this left hand side has a Gini of 0.1, right hand side has a Gini of again 0.1, then the Gini index at this level is also 0.1. So it is definitely a good decrease. If this is the best decrease among all the three variables that's available, then this will make the first level split. Once this is done, that's not the end of it. We will recursively apply this on each node. Then this one becomes parent node. This one becomes another parent node. And then we will start splitting this again. So this becomes a new parent node. This becomes a new parent node. And we will try to split this parent node to two small children. If any other variable, let's say x3 less than some k, was able to reduce this from 0.1 to 0.05. So here the root node, this became a root node, right? Which had a Gini of 0.1. And when we split this with x3 less than or equal less than k, we got two more splits. And at this level, now the Gini has decreased even further to 0.05. So we will recursively apply this until we reach a stopping criteria. So we will continue this when up to what? When we reach a stopping criteria. So what is a stopping criteria? Stopping criteria in general, very simple, no further decrease in Gini. We reached here. Let's say we try to split this further. The Gini here is 0.05. Whatever the data that is available and the variables that are available, when we try to split further, no split was able to reduce this than 0.05. Obviously, we would have to stop there. So this is the most common scenario of stopping criteria, when we cannot decrease the Gini further. Or if Gini has already reached 0, so let's say here Gini has reached 0, then there is no point attempting anything. What Gini 0 means, here all the observations, let's say we got 50 observations here that belongs to no, and 0 observations that belong to S class. And similarly here, 0 observations belong to no class and 120 observations belong to S class. So this is a perfect split. On the right hand side, it is Gini is 0. On the left hand side also Gini is 0. So this level has 0. This is already a perfect split. So there is no point in splitting this further. So it will stop. Either when you cannot decrease the Gini further, or when the Gini has already reached 0, there is no point. So it will stop. So that's the stopping criteria, general stopping criteria, right? If pure means, yes, Gini is 0. There is no further decrease possible. All observations in that node belong to only one class. That's called as perfectly pure node. See here, what happened in our tree. We started with 97% and 3%. That's already like way too high. 97% of the observations belong to no class and 3% of the observations belong to S class. Generally, we won't use this type of data. This type of data is called as highly imbalanced. We will start something like 60, 40, 70, 30. This tree is just for the demonstration purpose, not for the real usage. Why? In reality, when we use hundreds of variables, the trees we grow would be like way too big. It's not even possible to see like this. You have a tree which is going all the way up to 10 levels, then you cannot print it and see it, read it like this. So for simplicity, I choose this tree. Now look at this tree. This tree has 97% belong to no class and 3% belong to S class. Fantastic. Now my split criteria is balance less than 1800. So that's my first split criteria. S this side, no this side. If it is yes, then we ended up with some observations here. Here 98% of them belong to no class and 2% of them belongs to S class. Not a great improvement from this, but yeah, this is already 97. So very difficult to achieve. So 98% belong to no. So majority of the observations here are going to be on the no. On the remaining data here, which ended up into this node, 44% of them belong to no class and 56% of them belongs to S class. So that is why here the majority observations in this node is yes. So the label is given as yes, and even that color combination, so that to differentiate between these two classes. If it is green, then majority is no. If it is this grayish blue, then majority is going to be S. We are again checking, this become another node for us. We are checking again another condition. When we split this, it ended up with these nodes. These are called as the leaf nodes or the decision nodes. Why? We take the decision based on this. If a new observation comes in, we will check how this new observation is going to follow and which leaf node it will end into. And based on the majority of those observations in that leaf node, we will decide what is going to be the target, what is going to be the label for that. Okay, makes sense? These are called as the intermediate nodes, and these are called as our leaf nodes. So once we give a data to this CART algorithm, and this CART algorithm will try to generate this decision tree by learning through from this data. And what you get as an output is this model. This is nothing but your final tree structure. And when you have this tree structure, we can easily make predictions used out of this. These percentage are the number of observations that ended up in this node. So here to start with, let's say if there are 1000 observations, that's 100% data. That's something that we began with. Out of this 100%, 97%, that means 970 observations ended up in this node, and remaining 30 observations, which is like 3%, ended up in this node. So these are nothing but the percentage of observations of the data that we started with. So finally, if you look at all the leaf nodes, it would sum up to 100%. So 97% ended up in this node, 1% ended up in this node, 1% ended up in this node, another 1% ended up in this node. So total is 100%. Okay. trees doesn't have to be symmetric. What I mean is, let's say we make this split and we got this right hand child and the left hand child, and when we try to split this further, we were not able to split, then this becomes a leaf node by itself. But on the other side, we can just keep propagating new trees as long as we can decrease this Gini index, right? So then this becomes a leaf node, this becomes a leaf node, and these two becomes a leaf node. So that's why I say trees doesn't have to be symmetric. Biggest advantage of this tree-based model is simplicity. Look how clean these decisions are. If once we are able to learn from this data and generate this tree, you explain this tree to anyone just by using these if-else conditions, anybody would be easily able to make, okay, now I understand. Oh, if this is this, this is this, yeah, then it makes sense. Then this person, so then this observation is ending up in this node, and that's why we are giving this particular label, right? So that's the main advantage of this decision tree algorithms. As I said, there are many tree-based algorithms, but this is the CART, classification and regression tree. This is the most heavily used base algorithm for the tree, and that's why I'm concentrating on this alone. When you actually learn all the other topics, go a little more deep dive into the tree-based models, you would come across different additional concepts. In this example, again, we use Gini index as our measure. Instead of Gini, if we choose entropy as our measure, the formula completely changes. Entropy is generally measured like this. Entropy is equal to Pi by T log of Pi by T minus sigma I is equal to 1 to K. Let me write it neatly. Sigma I is equal to 1 to K Pi by T log of Pi by T. Okay. Now, for example, let's take this one, 5 and 5. If we try to compute entropy, that is minus 5 by 10 log of 5 by 10 minus another class minus 5 by 10 log of 5 by 10. So this is like minus 1 by 2 log 1 by 2, right? So log 1 by 2, I can write it as, sorry, log to the base 2, log to the base 2, log to the base 2. So 2 to the power of minus 1 log to the base 2 minus 1 by 2 log 2 to the, so when we send this minus 1, it's like 1 by 2 log 2 to the base 2 becomes 1 minus 1 here 1 by 2. So this is 1. Entropy has a range of 0 to 1. 0 means pure, 1 means impure, right? Then the concept remains the same, but since the metric and the formula has changed, it would change the computations behind the scenes. So when you read about another tree-based algorithm, instead of using Gini as the measure of impurity, they might use entropy as a measure of impurity. It's just that some cosmetic changes behind the scenes, then you would be able to recompute everything just based on the formula. Okay, so that's how this tree is generated. Now let's go back and look at the tree algorithm. And now if you read this tree algorithm, this is what the algorithm says. it looks very complex when you just read it without having any knowledge about how this happens behind the scenes. Now we have some knowledge about what happens behind the scenes. Now, if you just read this basic 4-level step algorithm, you would clearly understand what we have done so far. Classification and regression trees. An algorithm is for building a decision tree based on Gini impurity index. That's what we did as a splitting criteria. CART is a binary tree built by splitting node into child nodes repeatedly. We said that CART purely works on binary partitions. The algorithm works repeatedly in 3 steps until it satisfies a particular condition, stopping criteria, right? Now, rule 1, find each feature's best split. Okay, there are n number of variables which are features. For each feature, we find the best split. Then within each feature, there might be k-1 possible splits. That I also explained. It will change depending upon what type of variable we are using. But let's say if there are k different values in each feature, we might have k-1 possible split. Find the split that maximizes the splitting criteria. What's the maximizing splitting criteria here? The difference between the root node Gini index to the split Gini index. If the root node Gini index is 0.4, the split Gini index is 0.1, the difference is 0.3. Whichever split that gives the highest, that is going to be the split in that variable. Now find the node's best split among all the splits available within that criteria. So we compare across all the 3 variables, right? So we try to compare across the 3 variables. Whichever split maximizes that, that is going to be split the node. Split the node using the best split from the step 2. Repeat this step. This is called as recursive applying. We will repeat this process on each node until we achieve a splitting, we achieve a early stopping criteria, until a stopping criteria is satisfied, right? Now, if you just read these 3 rules, repeatedly for a couple of times, you would clearly see, okay, what's happening inside this CART tree. When you just read this as an algorithm, I am sure nobody would be able to understand anything. It looks very quite complex. So that's the reason I did not put the algorithm first. I took an example of explaining how this tree is generated. We walked through the process with some simple data. Now, if you go back and try to read how this propagation happens, you would be able to clearly see what a CART is, what a CART algorithm does. Now, let's apply it. Of course, application is something that's most important for us, right? All these things looks fancy until you try to see it in live, in application, right? Now let's see that. How does we apply all these things? Now, the biggest advantage that we have is we really do not have to go through any of that math behind the scenes to generate this to generate this model. That's the simplicity of what we see when we use Python as our programming language. Now, I have shown you so many things behind the scenes. Now, just let me write the code for those few things. And in a matter of like 10 to 15 lines of code, we would be able to do we would be able to complete all of these steps. Very simple. Okay. Now, this is where I said if you are familiar with Python before, that would be an added advantage. Import NumPy as NP. Unfortunately, due to time concern, I would not be able to explain all these steps. So from sklearn is a package that's available. From sklearn.tree, import decision tree classifier. It clearly says decision tree classifier. That means we are going to use a decision tree to build a classification model, right? So that's what we are going to do here. Now we need to get the data. The data set is this one. There is a file called as churn.csv. This is like predicting attrition. There are so many input variables, but let's read this into Python. So data is equal to pd.read_csv churn.csv. So once we read the data, you can just have a snapshot of it, just view a snapshot of it. So this is how the data looks like: account length, voicemail message, day minutes. More about this later. Churn, this is the variable that we have to predict. It has two values, like 0 and 1. 0 means customer is not going to leave. 1 means customer is going to leave. So we want to predict this variable using all the others. All the others are nothing but our input variables, right? So how do we do that? We can simply say target. Okay, there are some unnecessary variables in this. I would just try to drop them. I'll pick those small couple lines of code from my previous one, because they are not going to be useful at all for us. So these three variables, state, area code, and phone number, we are going to drop them. Why we are going to drop them? You need to understand the other concepts of data science for this. So when you have a variable, it doesn't mean that that variable is useful in prediction. So you need to figure out, is that variable useful in prediction or not? This is called as the causality analysis. So let's say if tomorrow it is going to rain, to predict rain, you might need variables like what's the temperature, what's the humidity, what's the wind pressure, what's the month of the year. All these things are useful because that would have impact on the rainfall tomorrow. But something like what is the day, like whether it is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, do you think that will have any impact on whether it will rain or not tomorrow? No, it depends on other factors, not like whether it is Sunday it will rain, whether it is Saturday it will not rain. So having a variable like Saturday or Monday doesn't make any sense to be part of the prediction. So those type of variables are called as useless variables. And in this case, I am dropping these two because we did not have any, so we did not have much to do with these three variables, right? So that's why we are dropping these two. Then we would separate our target variable. Target variable is nothing but this one, data churn. That's our target variable. Except for the target variable, rest of axis is equal to 1 means when we are dropping, we are dropping a variable or we are dropping a row. So data frame, this is like a table, right? So when we do some operations on this table, it's called as a pandas data frame. So these, we can either drop this first row or we can drop this first column. So if you are dropping this column, then you have to say axis is equal to 1. That tells us that, hey, from the data frame, we are trying to drop the column, not the row, right? So that's part of your data frame operation. So if you have to learn more about it, try to get a basic course on pandas and how to use pandas in Python for data management. So you would be able to easily learn what steps I'm trying to do here, okay? Now, again, I will do this to say input So I am going to separate my input variables. So these are going to be my input variables, except for this column, Sean, because I would not, that's my target variable. I would not want that column to be present as part of my inputs. So except for this, rest all of them. Okay, input is a keyword in Python. We should not use this. Instead, I will be calling it as X. When we do this operation, we would always try to split the data into training and testing. So that's again something that you have to learn by going through introduction to data science, right? When you have a data set, when you are trying to learn from the data set, you would not want to use the entire data set for your learning process. So if you do so, you are not left with any test portion, like how to test it or how good is your model. So we would always go with leaving out some portion of the data for our training versus test. In this case, I would go with 80-20, 80% of the data would go into the training and 20% of the data would go into test, right? Now, how do we do that? From sklearn.model selection import train test split. Now you might ask this question like, how do you know all these functions? That's where practice comes into the picture. So if you are familiar with the programming language like C, then you know a lot of libraries available in C like math.h, you know a lot of functions available in it. So this is a kind of library like math, and within that, these are nothing but functions, right? So when you learn these programming languages, you get familiar with that. So x_train, y_train, comma, x_test, comma, y_test. That's like creating separate data sets, train test split. Did not run this. So this is going to be X, and my test data set is going to be target test_size is equal to 0.2, random_state is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't get bothered by this piece of code that I'm writing. You would naturally understand. Just go and see what train test split means and how to use train test split. Then you would get most of the information available in anywhere. Okay. Now we have we have 4 data sets. Let me check how they look like. And no. So we have all of this, right? Now let's try to train the model. Training the model is something done like this. Decision tree classifier, we have called this function at the top. Now we are saying, hey, decision tree classifier, we are initializing it. Now for this, we will try to pass the data. This is done with a statement called as fit. Now for this, we will say x_train, comma, y_train. These 2 statements is all what we have discussed so far. All the math, everything that I have explained so far just goes into these 2 lines of code. That's all. That's the magic. That's the reason why we all love Python for performing data science, right? If you don't know how this algorithm works behind the scenes, then you would not appreciate what happens in these 2 statements. If you just say, I can use these two statements and build a model, yeah, you can, but you don't know what is happening behind the scenes. So that's why learning what the algorithm does and then learning how to do it with the help of a code, that's what makes things much more good for us. Now we have this model. If you want, we can print this model. So I have this model printed before. So you can see this is the tree. See how big this tree is. If I print this tree, you would never be able to understand anything from this. Now let's see how test works. So on the test data set, we have some data that's left out. So we will try to predict. So dt dot predict on the x underscore test. And we will save these predictions into some other object called as prediction. So on the test data set, we pass the test data set for the model. Model is now named as dt, and we say predict on the model, using the model on the test data set. So we got predictions. Now, how good are these predictions? So you need to know how good are these predictions. For that, we need to learn some metrics for classification, binary classification. What type of metrics do we use? Like it's available in the introduction to data science. If you go back, if you have to go back and refresh, accuracy, precision, recall, etc. So we would say from sk learn dot metrics import accuracy score, confusion matrix. For now, these two are enough. I would not go with the remaining. Print accuracy score, comma, accuracy underscore score of y test, which is the actuals versus my predictions. And another one is, it should not be capital P. Confusion underscore matrix. See what's the accuracy of this model? 93%. Without much fuss, we were able to make predictions and compare those predictions with the original data, with the y test, and it says we are accurate roughly around 93% of them. Okay, and this is called as the confusion matrix, which is slightly trickier topic, but generally when we make predictions, this is how we would like to compare them. Let's change the actuals, predictions. Actuals can be like no, yes. Predictions can also be like no, yes. 541, 28, 17, 81. That means when we predicted no, 541 times it was no. When we predicted no, 17 times it was yes. Think of this as a diagnosis. So when we diagnose someone for COVID by using a swab test, when we say no, that person did not had COVID, 541 times this person did not had COVID. But 17 times when the swab test says that the person did not had COVID, in fact, the person has COVID. So that means we were wrong in these 17 cases. We were right in 541 cases, we were wrong in 17 cases. Vice versa. When we predicted yes, that means when we say the person is having COVID, 81 times the person was really having COVID, 28 times the person did not had COVID, but we said yes. So these two are errors. These two are our mistakes. And these are smaller numbers, 28, 17. These are our correct decisions. Look at our correct decisions. They are bigger numbers, 541 80, 81, etc. Right? So to understand the confusion matrix, I have given a detailed introduction in my introduction to data science class. If you just want to go, possible if there is a recording, you can just revisit it or just try to read about what confusion matrix is over the internet. You would be able to get it. Okay. Okay, fine. We just have 5 more minutes today, so then I will stop here. Let's open for questions. Feel free to post your questions. Yeah, I will share the data set. I'll share this piece of codes that I'm writing also. Just because of the time constraint, we ran a little faster into the code today, but tomorrow maybe we will take a relaxed look at the code again. We'll go through a little more details of the code as well. But that's the base tree. That's how tree tries to learn something from the data so that we can use it for the decision making. Tomorrow, the concepts would be slightly more complex. If you have understood this, how this tree works, then all the tomorrow concepts would be like much more easier. PPT, I'll check with one of my training partners, because the PPT was taken from their training organization. If they are okay to share, I'll definitely share it. You don't have to mention the split criteria, but if you really want to, you can. So see here in the decision tree classifier, we did not mention any arguments. There are so many arguments available. Criteria is equal to Gini. So this is the criteria is equal to Gini. By default, it is mentioned as Gini. So that's the reason you do not have to mention it. But if you have to change it, let's say I want to change the criteria to entropy, I can change it. This is the beauty of using notebooks or Jupyter Lab, where when you don't know something about a function, you can get the help here itself. You can see what parameters are available, what are the default values for each of those parameters. And also you can try to go and read the details like criteria. It takes 2 values, Gini and entropy. Default value is Gini. We don't use entropy because entropy is slightly more cumbersome in calculation because of using log to the base 2. Gini is faster in calculation. So that's the reason it's always Gini. You don't have to set the split criteria. You would try to check all the available splits in a variable, and you would pick what is the best split in each variable first. Then you compare the best of each variables to decide which split across all the variables is giving you the least value of Gini. And that's how you decide what is going to be the split criteria. Maybe we would just briefly talk about it for 5-10 minutes tomorrow. We would be able to do that. Even when you have 5,000 algorithms, 5,000 variables, that shouldn't be a problem because they are very efficient. It's only time taking. It might take, now when I run this step, it just took a split second to complete this process. When you have 5,000 variables, maybe it would take half an hour or even 1 hour, right? So for taking time to learn is not really a big problem. It can, okay? Axis is equal to 1 is to let the data frame operation drop, know that we are dropping a column, not a row. If we give axis is equal to 0, that means we are dropping a row. If we say axis is equal to 1, that means we are dropping a column. Yeah, possibility to view the tree. This is the tree. You can save this as a PDF, expand it, but readability goes for a toss. You would not be able to read because the tree is so big. It had made so many splits. You can just see those minute details over printed there. Even if you save it as a PDF, I don't think you would be able to really make anything from this. We can also print the tree in the form of a nested rules. That's also very complex. That's a whole point in bringing this statement. It's not like you have to develop a tree and again write code to use the tree for making predictions, right? All of it, that is, I mean, already done into this particular statement. Genie is better. Why? It is much faster. Not about accuracy. Accuracy will be more or less same for both Genie and Entropy, but Genie computation is faster. The reason for that is Entropy uses log to the base 2. Log calculations are much slower than simple arithmetic calculations. So that's why we prefer to go with Genie, not with Entropy. With smaller data sets, it would not make much of a difference. But when you have very large data sets where your training process would take a couple of hours, then maybe changing it to Entropy would increase your learning time to another half an hour or so. Confusion matrix is to validate how good your predictions are when you compare it with your actuals. Think of this. You make your predictions for the next 7 days, whether it is going to rain or not today. Now you give that predictions in the form of a in the form of a note to someone. Now at the end of the week, next week, how many of your predictions came true? You would have to validate it. Instead of just saying whether your predictions came true or not, you are going to validate it exactly like when you said it's not going to rain, it didn't rain. When you said it's going to rain, did it rain? So it's like a 2-by-2 comparison. When you said it's not going to rain, no rain, it rained. So that's the 2-by-2 comparison, which we are calling it as the confusion matrix. Generally, dividing training into testing is done through a random selection process. When we use this train test split, we just mention what would be the proportion of your test size. I mentioned it as 0.2. That means randomly 20% of the data will go into testing and 80% of the data will go into training. Which one goes into train, which observation go into test, we cannot control that. And we always love that. We want the selection purely on a random basis, the split into train and test into a random basis.